I've had a lot of requests on how do you even begin starting to invest into the S&P 500 as somebody from the UK. But first of all, let me go into a bit of depth into what the S&P 500 actually is and why it seems to be probably a safe bet. So put very simply, the S&P 500 is a stock market index tracking the stock performance of the top 500 largest companies listed on the stock exchange in America. And that is why it is pretty reliable, and so far in the last half a century has been pretty safe because it's the top 500 companies, which means if one company falls out of it, another one comes back in. You should always be okay. Trust me, right? If the top 500 companies in America went bust and we all lost all of our money that we had in the S&P 500, we're probably ash by that point because there'd have probably been larger worldwide problems at hand than the companies just aren't making any money anymore. The nukes have probably gone off and we're all donezo anyway. It won't matter anymore. Since the inception of the S&P 500, since 1957 through the end of 2023, it has returned on average 10.26%. So when I did a video on TikTok about this, people were like, oh, but what about if the market crashes and things like that? This 10% that we're using when we use our demo figures and we look at like projections and stuff like that is already factoring in that at some point there might be another crash. But the point with the S&P 500 and investing into this is getting rich slow. This isn't a pyramid scheme. This isn't day trading. This isn't Forex or like looking at graphs and trying to buy low, sell high and all that stuff. This is put money in a pot and forget about it. And put more money in as soon as you possibly can. Put as much money in as it'll physically let you do. Because you see what I mean? Like, you really don't have to be a very smart person and know exactly what you're doing for this to do its thing. This is getting rich slowly. That average of 10% or whatever already counts the other times that the market has crashed. Every time that has happened, we bounce back. For example, there was a crash a couple of years ago through the pandemic, and then since then, it's returned like 20 odd percent per year to catch back up. That's how we end up with a 10% average, because some years, yes, it might drop, but other years there'll be a huge gain. Like in the last couple of years, there's been a huge gain because it's the economy catching back up to where it was pre-pandemic, or beyond pandemic even, really, because again, it just continually averages 10%. There are loads of different sites and apps or whatever that you can use to invest in places. Personally, I like Vanguard. Vanguard has been around for a very long time. It's very well... It's got a lot of respect. It ain't like... I don't want to name other competitors, but like... Not that this is sponsored in any way. But like... There are companies that pop up like within the last couple of years that are just going to be less reputable than something like Vanguard. Vanguard has been around a long time. So step number one of how do you actually do this, you want to create yourself a Vanguard account. All of this is free, by the way. Then once you've got a Vanguard account, you want to create yourself a stocks and shares ISA. And put very simply, what a stocks and shares ISA is, it's a tax efficient account. You have a limit set by the government in terms of how much money you are allowed to invest per year, but in return for abiding by said limit, they will not tax any of your gains on whatever you make within that account. Say, for example, you invest and you do lots of investing and you do really well through the S&P 500 over the next 20, 30, 40 years, whatever. Anything you pull out of it is tax-free. You can be paying yourself hundreds of thousands of pounds when you're of retirement age or whenever you've got enough money in there, tax-free, by abiding by that stocks and shares £20,000. There are other ways of investing into the S&P 500, but those are more for people that are going to invest more than £20,000 a year, and at that point you have to pay capital gains tax, and it gets a lot more complicated. If this is just entry-level stuff like me, where you just want to do it in the easiest way possible, take the slowest route that you possibly can, and just, min-max, as it were, stocks and shares ISA, government sets a £20,000 limit per year, and then once you've got your stocks and shares ISA, you have to choose what you're going to put money into. This is what I use and what I don't know. I don't want to make recommendations because at the end of the day, I'm not a very smart person. I don't have any secrets here. I'm not telling you, this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. This is just what people have done for decades and decades and how people set their own children up and all that sorts of thing. We'll go through some like demos of numbers and money in a minute, but like, here's what I do. So S&P 500, UCITS, ETF, it'll say VUAG. There's two different options here. You've got accumulation and income. So the difference is that if you tick accumulation, any money that it makes per year goes straight back into the fund. And that's really how the money keeps making you more money, because you're getting 10% every year, assuming it manages to keep up that 10%, which again, history says it will, but we can't predict the future, right? Things can go up and down, but the past, it's a decent indication of what's going to happen. Accumulation will leave all the money in there, whereas income, if you tick this box, say you put £20,000 in this year, and over a year it earns 10%, that's £2,000. This will just directly pay you £2,000 a year income if you've got 20,000 in there. Or you can let it accumulate and just choose when to withdraw stuff yourself. That's what I do. That is probably what's going to make you more money quickly. Whereas this is what you'd probably switch to down the line when you actually want to start paying yourself automatically. Okay, let's run through a variety of examples and how you can expect things to look just based upon predictions. Again, none of this is set in stone, but logically it should work out, and it has worked out for everybody that's done it in the last 50 years, because for 50 years it's returned 10%. So this year, for example, this is the hypothetical scenario that you put in your £20,000 in the first year you possibly can, and then never again, right? So this is, for example, what I could do right now. The other day, I put in £20,000 because that is my ISA limit. I have just done that for 2024, yeah? If I never put another penny in, like contribution, 0, yeah? And I'm currently 26. In 24 more years, by the time I am 50, that £20,000 that I have never put another penny into is now just shy of £200,000. Yeah? This website's called, it's just an investment calculator. You can find a million of them. But like, pay attention to the different columns here. So this is your amount of years from the beginning of your investment history. This is the amount of money that you've put in through depositing each year. This is your interest in terms of how much it's paying you based upon the amount that's already in there. And this is your balance at the end of that year. So watch this, right? Year one, I've just put in £20,000, but this is hypothetically if I never put another penny in. For that first year, I will get 10% back. If I get 10% back, it'll give me £2,000. Cool. So I will end that year with a balance of 22,000. So now next year, I will get 10% of 22,000 instead of 20,000, which is then 2,200. So I will then finish the end of year 2 with 24,200, which means that next year I get 10% of that, which is 2,400. And this is how it continues to build, because these percentages can get pretty crazy, because again, it's percentages and compounding interest is nuts. So by the time I am 50, it'll be paying me just shy of £18,000 a year if I never put any more in, which of course I will. So let's do some examples. With this example, I've put my £20,000 in for this year, but say I end up, something goes catastrophically wrong, and now I can only put in £300 a month. Yeah? So £20,000 at the beginning, and then £300 a month after that for 24 years. Now, in 24 years, it's worth £500,000. It's loads more than it was. So again, now we're accumulating interest not just on the end balance of each year, but also the amount of money that we're adding to that. And this is how, again, it just gets crazy. Now, by the time I'm 50, if we look at that middle column, it's paying me nearly £50,000 a year. For me personally, let me show you what best case scenario looks like. And I hope that this sort of inspires some of you. Again, the maximum amount of money that we are allowed to put into a stocks and shares ISA per year is £20,000. So let's take a look at how much I will be worth if I am successfully able to put away £20,000 every year between now and when I am 50 years old. And I know that some of you guys are probably younger, thinking 50 seems like it's forever away and you don't want to wait that long to get rich and all that sort of thing. But here's the thing. Life is decently long, but passes really quite quickly. I promise you that if you're 35 watching this, please guys, if you're watching this and you're above the age of 30, comment down below, what does it feel like to be your age? If you're 35, I bet it doesn't feel that different to when you were 25, but you blinked and 10 years passed, didn't it? That's how life is, you know? You blink and years have gone by. I blinked and it has now been 10 years since I left high school. Time flies crazy fast. If you're currently 16 watching this, just think, you've got more years, you know? But anyway, let me show you best case scenario. And I appreciate that this is like pretty out there, but it is possible. So now what we're about to do is I put in £20,000 And then for the next 24 years, I managed to put in £20,000 a year, maxing out that ISA that we're allowed to do. Now, here's what I'm worth by the age of 50. End balance is 2.1 million. 2.1 million. I will have put in 500,000 myself over the course of my lifetime, but it will have paid me 1.6 million in interest. That is insane. Now let's again look at the middle columns. At that rate, I will be... Okay, we're going to round up £7,000 here just for the sake of pedanticness. In 17 years, if we just round up £7,000 because, I'm sure I'll have £7,000 in assets elsewhere or money in the bank account, whatever. By the time I am, I'm currently 26, and in 17 years I'll be 43? Best case scenario, I am a millionaire at 43. That's pretty cool. And then just less than 10 years after that, now we're worth 2 million. By the age of 50, 24 years, 50. By the age of 50, best case scenario, if I continue to max out the stocks and shares ISA every year, it'll be paying me just shy of £200,000 a year. And again, because you go through the stocks and shares ISA, that's tax free. I can't stress enough how young 40 actually is. Life expectancy is only increasing, right? Assuming you live to 80, which if you died at 80, that is kind of young to die these days. You are only halfway through your life at 40. You could retire at 4. So best case scenario, right? If I manage to max out from 26 to 40 years old or 43 or whatever, that 20k, I'm worth $1 million at 40 and 2 million at 50. It's crazy. And again, none of this is set in stone. This isn't financial advice or whatever. This is just making logical decisions based upon things that have happened in the past. It's up to you whether or not that risk is worth it for you. But again, realistically, if the top 500 companies in America go under, we've got much bigger problems than where our money's gone. And also an apprehension that I had about this, because realistically, I'm not the one that was financially savvy. I grew up really very poor. I lived in a council house. My mom was a carer. My dad was an abusive alcoholic who ran away when I was 13. The most my mother ever earned in a year was 20k. I didn't go to university. I failed college. I got made redundant from an apprenticeship. I worked at Tesco for like 5 years on minimum wage. I was earning £300 a month until I was like 22, until I'd managed to take it into my own hands and make something of myself. I want to inspire you guys to do something similar, but you don't even have to, right? You can go the normal 9-to-5 path and still do this, right? My partner has got a normal 9-to-5 corporate job and she earns enough that she can max out her ISA and she's only like 26, Like, I promise you that 20 grand is not a ridiculous amount of money to put away a year. Like, I know that it might sound a bit tone deaf because of the cost of living crisis and all that, but it really kind of isn't. And the thing is that you don't even actually have to put away that much to set yourself up. I personally, if I was ever worth $500,000, that'll do. Looking at my graph, based upon my best case scenario that we just did, in 12 years from now, I'm worth if we round up because it's closer, in 11 years from now, I'd be worth $500,000, and in interest, it would be paying me $42,500. In 11 years, I'll be 37. That's crazy. I'll be worth $500,000 at 37, and I could retire then. Realistically, I could, because I don't spend much money. Like, I don't spend much money. I'm pretty frugal. I'm sitting here in trackies that I've been using to go to the gym with since I was 17 years old, and they've got holes in, There are young lads out there that drive cars they can't afford to impress people that don't care, wearing clothes that have got the most expensive name brand designer badge on to impress people that really don't care. Like, I remember I saw like a series on TikTok where this dude had approached people on the street and asked them how much their outfit is worth, and people would be saying thousands, and it's crazy to me. You have money, you can find money. It just depends upon what you choose to spend that money on. Different people like different things and value their money in different ways, for sure. But you don't have to even invest that much to set yourself up. Let's use the example of just £300, because I reckon £300 is reasonable for most adults working full-time to find, provided they are decently financially savvy, not making silly decisions or spending money in a silly way. If you're living in a expensive area, you've got kids, you're a single parent. These are all things that might be difficult for you, for sure. But like, I think realistically, £300 is not absurd because, again, I know 18-year-olds that £300 a month goes on a car or up their nose and things like that. Let me show you what you can do with just £300 a month. Okay, so we'll do this in stages so we can like try and make it as realistic as possible for some young people. So say you're 18, right? And you want to invest £300 a month for 8 years. 8 years brings you up to my age now. I didn't start doing this until this year. This is how I've been stupid. I have had a big chunk of money just sat in a current account, not gaining any money. Don't be like me. I have lost thousands over the years by not doing this sooner. So, starting amount 300. By the time you are my age, let's see what that's turned into. It's not going to be crazy, but it's going to be very interesting to look at. But watch how it just multiplies. So £300 for 8 years is 44,000 end balance. You will yourself have put in just shy of 29,000 and it will have paid you just shy of 15,000. Just by the time you're my age, £15,000 for free. But now let's keep going. Let's say you do £300 a month until you're 40. So what's that? 22 years. So £300 a month for 22 years with a return of 10%, investing £300 every month. Now, the end balance is 273,000. You are worth £250,000 at 40 years old, just because you put 300 quid away. And I promise you, 300 quid is very reasonable. The reality of the situation is that as you age, you should be earning more money. Most people earn more money the older they get. Like, a 25-year-old should be earning more than an 18-year-old. A 30-year-old should be earning more than a 25-year-old. A 40-year-old should be earning more than the 30-year-old. A 50-year-old should be earning more than the 40-year-old. So realistically, as your income increases through whatever methods you choose to use to get there, whether it be a 9-to-5 corporate-style job, whether you work for yourself, whether you do social media, doesn't matter. As your income scales up, the amount that you're putting in can scale up. So just because you can afford at 18 years old to put 300 in, or hypothetically, right now, if you're 18, maybe you can't afford £300 a month, but you can afford £100 a month. But maybe by the time you're 21, you've finished uni, you've got a proper job, now you can afford the £300 a month. Then maybe you get a promotion a few years later, you're earning an extra 10k a year. Now maybe you make it £500 a month. You see what I mean? Anyway, for anybody wondering, by the way, £20,000 balanced out across the year is about £1,666 per month that you're allowed to put in. So there's that. Anyway, by the time you're 40, investing £300 a month, you're now worth £250,000, or just a bit more of. You yourself will have put in £79,500, and it will have given you nearly £200,000 for free. Let's go take a look at the schedule down here. So by the time you're 40, at that point, it is then paying you £24,700 per year. That's free money. It's not taxable because it's in a stocks and shares ISA. And again, there's nothing to say that they won't change the rules of stocks and shares ISAs, but like, it would only, if they did, it would negatively impact them as well. Trust me, because this is how the rich get richer. Imagine what really, really rich people do with stuff like this, where they're not bothered about having to pay capital gains tax. There are people out there that could quite easily shove £100,000 a year into the S&P 500 and not be bothered about the capital gains tax. They don't have to go through the tax-free stocks and shares ISA. And then their money is just compounding and making them so much more money. Because think about it. You probably follow some people on YouTube, like car guys and stuff like that, that will buy a new £100,000 car every year. You know, if that £100,000 car that they buy every single year goes into this, imagine that. And again, they're probably doing both because they earn that much money, you know? The amount of money that is out there is unreasonable. It's crazy. Anyway, so this is £300 a month until you're 40 years old. Let's take it to 50 years old, shall we? Okay, so now you've been putting in £300 a month for 32 years, and now you're worth £769,000. You are 3/4 of the way to being a millionaire. You're probably a millionaire in assets if you count the fact that by 50 years old, I'd expect you to have a house, a mortgage, a car, and some stuff, you know? You're probably already a millionaire by assets. You're nearly a millionaire by bank account. So now, at 50 years old, you've spent £115,000 putting money in, but it has given you £653,000 in interest. By this point, at 50 years old, and again, we're looking at the middle column here, it's now paying you £70,000 a year in income, and it's increasing every year because of compound interest. It's crazy. Now, let's do one more jump, shall we? Retirement age in the UK, to get your state pension is currently 65. If you're watching this at 18 years old, it's probably going to be much higher than that by the time you actually get there. But let's say you manage to invest £300 a month from the age of 18 until you are 65. This is nuts. This just went crazy. So now you've been inputting £300 a month for 47 years and you've hit retirement age. You're 65, you can retire, take your state pension. But trust me, if you've been doing this for that long, you won't need to retire off the state pension. You can retire off stuff like this and live off the interest. Because guess what you're worth now? Just off putting in £300, you are now worth £3.3 million. By the way, there were some people that said, oh, but it's dollars, it's not pounds. It doesn't matter. It could say 3 million Lego bricks. Percentages don't care about the digit that's the unit that's before them. If you had 300 Lego bricks and you earn 10% back, you've got 330 Lego bricks. You know, it don't matter. So isn't this crazy, right? At this point, you have yourself put in £169,000 over the course of 47 years, but it has paid you 3.1 million. And at this point, again, if we come to the bottom of it, now, at the age of 65, you're retiring and you could live off £302,000 a year tax-free income. £302,000 a year tax-free income. Mad. And that is just for putting in £300 a month. Okay, let's do the absolute bare minimum. The absolute worst case scenario that I think anyone is going to be possibly looking... Anyone that's looking at this, you're probably somebody that is at least somewhat financially savvy, otherwise you wouldn't care to look at this in the first place. Imagine you are only capable of putting in £100 a month. Let's see what that looks like, shall we? I've not even looked at that calculation. Let's say from the age of 18 years old until you hit retirement age at 65, you put in £100 a month, and let's see what that does. Everybody, you're going to love this one. By the way, if you haven't already, do be sure to subscribe, because this is fun. So, now, let's see how much we're worth. So you've invested just £100 for 47 years. What do you reckon we've got? Your end balance is now 1.1 million. You will still retire a millionaire just from putting away £100 a month. I promise you can afford £100 a month. I was able to afford £100 a month when I was 17, when I was earning £2.50 an hour working at a school. I promise you can. You absolutely can. So again, if we come down here, you will retire at 65, be making just over £100,000 a year tax-free income just off the interest alone. And again, it only keeps compounding from there. So now, I want to inspire you some more. Let me show you best case scenario. Absolute best case scenario, what can happen. Let's do the calculation of you manage to max out your stocks and shares ISA every single year from the ages of 18 to 65. So for 47 years, you managed to put in £20,000. This is going to be, realistically, I think most people are probably not going to be able to put in £20,000 a year until they're in their 30s and have got a decent salary. So I don't think this is necessarily incredibly realistic. In fact, we'll do that calculation after the fact, just to do that, right? Let's do this now. This is best case scenario. This is absurd. This is going to apply to only people that probably started rich anyway. But let's have a look at this. So best case scenario, for 47 years, from the age of 18 until you are 65, you put away £20,000 a year because that is the tax-free limit. You are now going to retire at 65, bearing in mind if you did this, you're retiring long before then, with just shy of 21 million. You yourself, over the course of your lifetime, will have put in 940,000, but the total interest will be 20 million. And if you retire at 65, now, if we come down to the bottom, again looking at the middle column, you will be earning just shy of £2 million. At 66, you're earning over £2 million a year tax-free in interest, provided it continues to be the way it has been for the last half a century. Isn't that incredibly mental? Check this one out. If we scroll back up the timeline, say you start doing this at 18 and somehow manage to max out your ISA every single year. From 18, in just 17 years, so you'll be in your 30s, you will be a millionaire because you'll be worth 993,000 in 17 years. That's all you'll be. Well, 17 plus 18, that's how old you'll be. Now let's get a little bit more complicated with it, shall we? Let's look at a realistic time span for like someone working a normal job who gets normal promotions and salary increases and stuff like that, shall we? So, first of all, say you're starting at 18. Say from 18 to 21, you put away £100. Again, we'll use worst case scenario here a little bit. So really pay attention now, because we're going to keep changing these numbers as we go. So you're 18 years old, you put away £100 initially, and then £100 a month until you are 21. Right? That is now worth £4,317. Again, it isn't long enough for compound interest to be really taking off yet. You've only earned 617 quid for free. But now, we're 21 years old. We're going to take that figure of 4,317 and put it over here, because that's now your new starting amount. Because you're 21 now, you've probably got a proper job, you've finished university, you're getting paid more, or should be getting paid more than when you were 18. So, now you're going to change how much you're depositing. So what we're going to do now is, you've still got your 4,300 in there, you're 21 years old, but now you want to start putting away £200 instead of £100. And we're going to say you're going to do that for 4 years. You're going to do that until you're 25. Now you're 25 and you have £18,000 in there with total interest of £4,000 for free. Nice. So you're 25, £18,000. We're going to do the same little loop that we just did. At 25, you've probably been doing your job for a while. Again, you should be earning a decent chunk of money by the time you're 25, or capable of earning a decent chunk of money by the time you're 25. Whether or not you're self-employed, whether or not you went the 9-to-5 route, whatever, you should have had a few promotions. At 25, realistically, you should be earning more than you were earning at 21. So now what we're going to do is, at 25 years old, you've now got £18,000 in there, and for the next 5 years, because you're now getting paid a bit more again, you want to pay a little bit more in. So for 5 more years from then on, until you are 30 years old, you're going to put away £300 a month. Let's see what that turns into by the time you're 30 years old. Okay, so now you are worth 52,000. Awesome, cool. Let's put that in. While you're in your 30s, you will start making exponentially more money quite often. This is where salary increases should be coming decently hefty. You should be doing pretty well, or can be doing pretty well. So now, let's say you're 30 years old, and for the next 10 years, you want to put away £500. So you have, at 30 years old, you've got £52,000 from the last few years of investing and adjusting how much you invest as your lifestyle improves through your salary increases and the amount of income you get. Because something you've got to be careful of is watching out for lifestyle creep. A mistake a lot of people make in life, or it's not necessarily a mistake, but a choice, albeit one they don't often realize they're making, is that people get to a point in life where they earn more money, but their lifestyle creeps up with that to the point where it doesn't feel like they're earning that much more money. For example, okay, we'll make this comparison. My partner's mother earns dramatically more than my mother ever did. But if you give my partner's mother's income to my mother, with the lifestyle she's lived, she'll feel like a millionaire even though she wouldn't be. Whereas, because my partner's mother's got like a nice house, 5-bed house, it probably doesn't feel that dramatic. You know, lifestyle creep. Once you get a bigger house, your outgoings increase. Once you get a nicer car, your outgoings increase. When you go on more holidays, your outgoings increase. Lifestyle creep is a thing. People earn more money, but it doesn't feel like they earn more money year to year because they spend more money. If you be careful of lifestyle creep, all of this is very possible. Anyway, moving on. Let's see what that returns us now. So for 10 years, between 30 and 40 years old, you earn enough now that you can put away £500 a month. Let's see what you're worth now at 40 years old. Okay, cool. So now you're worth £236,189. At 40 years old, you're now being paid more. At 40 years old, you should be earning more than you were being paid at 30 years old. So let's say at 40 years old, until you're 50 years old, now you start putting in £750 a month. So let's see where that takes us. So we've got the 236,000 that we've accumulated since we began this process. And now, at 50 years old, you're worth £763,000. Or just shy of, or just a little bit more than. Which, by the way, at this point would probably be enough for a lot of people to live off of and not work a day in their life again. I don't know about you guys, but I could personally retire and live off £70,000 very, very easily. Because you could, at any given point, what you can do is you can cash out the interest that you accumulate each year and just keep accumulating the same amount of interest rather than it compounding into more and more. So for example, here at the 10th year of this system, you can cash out at 69k. Or if you give it another year, it'll go up another £10,000, you know? Okay, so the final calculation that we're going to do here, just to finish this off and show you guys how you're going to be a multimillionaire, or could end up being a multimillionaire if you just followed this process along, is you're now 50 years old. You're earning a good chunk of money, or you should be. You're financially savvy. Let's see what happens if by 60, for 10 more years, between 50 and 60, you start putting away £1,000 a month instead. And remember, this started when you were 18. You were putting away just £100 a month. It moved with your income as you did. As you earned more money, you put more money in relative to the amount of money you make. Yeah? So now we're 50, going to 60, and we're going to put in £1,000 a month. What does that make you? At 60 years old, which by the way is still 5 years before you're able to retire, from the government anyway. Now you've got 2.1 million. There you go. 2.1 mil. And you were a millionaire at 3 years into that process, so you'd have been a millionaire at 53 from that. But at 60 years old, now you're getting paid in interest £200,000 a year. There you go. So yeah, I hope this was helpful or inspiring to someone. Like I say, I just went through tons of different situations. Like worst case scenario being you can only invest a couple of £100 for your entire life. Best case scenario is you max out your ISA every year that you're alive. And then a more realistic scenario where you put some money in relative to the amount of money you make, but continue to move the amount of money that you invest as your income increases. Because again, as you get older, your income should or will increase. So that's how you invest and what the potential is through it. And again, none of this is set in stone because it can go down. But if we look at what the only thing we can use to make logical deductions as to what we can see is going to happen is the past. If we look at the past, it's averaged 10% per year return. So we use 10%. Realistically, it's more than 10% if you actually look at it. So we could have actually earned even more money. And also, there's an element that makes it safer that I enjoy about this. Because for a few years, I've put money into a pension pot. But I never particularly enjoyed putting money into a pension pot because while it appreciates pretty massively too, it's also about 10%. You can't get that money out until you're of retirement age. With the stocks and share ISA, you can withdraw money at any given time. So for example, in the last few days, I've seen that my Vanguard account has increased like £100. I could pull that £100 out right now if I wanted to. And it's £100 of free money because it's just interest, you know? But I'm going to leave it in there because the more money you leave in there, the more it ends up making you and the faster you end up rich. So don't see this as lost money because that's what I would have seen it as. The mistake that I made is I've had tens of thousands of pounds for years now sat in a current account that I didn't need to have in a current account. Instead, I can now use my money to make me money. And I could have started a few years ago. I'm 26. I could have started doing this at 22 and been 4 years ahead. If I'd have started 4 years earlier, I could have been a millionaire at 39 instead of 43, based upon best case scenario. Again, best case scenario might not even last. In fact, let's do this one for you. When you do the job that I have, which is making money via social media, a lot of people will say, what are you going to do when you fall off? This doesn't last forever. And you're probably right, it doesn't. Let me show you what happens if I manage to max out my ISA for a few years because of the job that I have, and then I end up like on my arse and need to find something else to do. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, say I start with £20,000 and for 5 years I manage to max that out, because that's realistic. With the job that I have, that is very realistic. I suppose I probably shouldn't say this, but I can do that. I could do that, like, easily. After 5 years of doing that, 5 years maxing out my ISA, there will be £166,522 in there. Okay, so I did that for 5 years, but then I fell off and I had to go and get a normal job. And because I don't have qualifications in very many things or whatever, for some reason I can't earn enough that I can't put anything in here anymore. Then what happens? So I've got £166,000 in there and I just leave it until I'm 50 years old. I've fallen off of social media, I've gotten a normal job, I've gone back to Tesco or something, but I leave the money in the pot. Let's see what should happen to it. At 50 years old, I'm a millionaire. At 50 years old. Let's do this calculation. Let's see how much will be in there by the time I am my mother's age right now. So this hypothetical situation began 5 years in the future. So for 5 years, I put in 20k a year, and that accumulated to 166,522. And then for 33 years after that, putting me to my mother's age of 64 years old, I didn't put another penny, nothing at all. At 64 years old, I should be worth just shy of £4 million. At 64 years old, that should return me 351,000 a year, interest free. tax-free. So, you know when your influencers fall off or just disappear off the internet? That does happen decently frequently. It's because they've made enough money a lot of the time that they can use the money they've made to set themselves up for life. It isn't necessarily about having to earn enough money every year and continually do that. That's kind of just living paycheck to paycheck. There comes a point where, like, for example, some of these YouTubers are making generational wealth. They absolutely are. There are YouTubers that get millions of views a video. If you're getting millions of views a video, they can max out this every month. Piece of piss. So it doesn't matter if they fall off or end up without a job in a few years, because you only need a few really good years to set yourself up for life. Those figures I just did just then were based off 5 decent, not amazing years. Again, for some perspective here, I worked out that for me personally, to be able to save £20,000 a year, I only need to earn, before tax, £42,000 a year. That's it. Now, for each one of you guys, that is going to be individual down to you, yourself, your personal circumstance, where you live, your outgoings, whether you're single, whether you've got a kid, whatever. But this is how crazy this can be. So yeah, this ended up being pretty long-winded, but I hope this inspired or helped someone in some way. Again, none of this is set in stone, but logically it should work out, because it always has worked out. Through thick and thin, through highs and lows, it seems to always work out, because it's get rich slow. A lot of people hear these numbers and think too good to be true. I did, but it's one of them where because of the length of time and requirements from the person, it's actually not, like, it's not easy to put away 20 grand a year, but it's incredibly rewarding eventually if you do. It's one of them risk, reward, effort things where, yeah, if you don't put the effort in to be able to do that, then yeah, you don't end up succeeding from it. But if you can, you do. 10 years ago, I watched this video by a man called Woody's Gamertag. Back then, everybody made Call of Duty videos, everybody was a Call of Duty YouTuber, and Woody was significantly older than the other people that did the same job as him. Woody right now, I think he's like 54, something like that. He was 40 when his colleagues that did the same job as him making Call of Duty videos were like 16 to 21, right? So he was a smart man with money. He was an accountant. He has like a master's degree in software engineering and all that sort of thing. So he had money before he even started the YouTube thing. And during his YouTube thing, he ended up taking on like a father figure role, because he'd do videos giving advice to young people about things. And like I said at the start of this video, my dad ran away when I was young. So like a lot of these sorts of videos really helped. And this video that he made 10 years ago is exactly the process that I've just explained to you guys today.
Hey guys.
If you've got the attention span to watch my videos, go and watch this video, because he's going to explain the exact same thing of how the S&P 500 works. Now look at this, right? That video is 10 years old. Look at some of these comments. 4 years ago, this guy commented this. I watched this at 18. It sparked my interest in personal finance. 6 years later, at 24, I just hit 100,000 in my investment accounts. Here's an interesting one for you younger guys. Mr. Beast himself is one of the people that financially was inspired and educated via Woody's Gamertag's videos. It is insane. Here's a few others. I watched this video about 4 times every year for the past 9 years. I'm almost at 400k. I'd be nowhere without you. And another. I watched this video at 21. I'm 28 now and sitting on just over 300,000. And this is British pounds, by the way. Was lucky to start with 30k. Statistically on my way to a cool 12 million by retirement age. But will likely retire a fair bit early. So from this video and the videos that I'm making on this account, if this inspires anyone to succeed, and even one person of the few hundred people that might watch these videos actually succeeds and does it, cool, because I was inspired 10 years ago because of this video. Granted, again, I was making £300 a month until like 5 years ago, so I didn't have the ability to do it. But then when I started earning good money through what I managed to build for myself, I knew that A, it won't last forever, and B, I need to use it in some way that's going to set me up for life, because you can. A lot of people, when they earn a lot of money, piss it up a wall, take it up the nose, or crash a car that's worth nothing now. But with being smart, get yourself a house as soon as you can, and all that sort of thing, you can set yourself up in just a few years of success. You really can. So this account is not just for talking about like what to do with money, but also how to use social media to make that money in the first place. See you in a bit.